Welcome to another episode of Rhyme and Reason. Brought to you by the College of Arts and Humanities, we call it RHU around here, at the University of Maryland. Rhyme and Reason podcasts are fascinating discussions with some of the most compelling scholars in arts and humanities from the University of Maryland. Be sure to subscribe to Rhyme and Reason wherever you listen to your podcasts so you won't miss a single episode. I'm your host, Stephanie Shonikan. I'm the proud dean of the College of Arts and Humanities. Our podcast series is focused on conversations about how we live out our strategic commitments as a college: transformative thinking, boundless creativity, expansive empathy, and meaningful futures. On Rhyme and Reason, we'll hear from folks from across the RHU spectrum who are studying and thinking about these powerful ideas. Ganga, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Dean Shonikan. I'm delighted to be here.
Of course. So on Rhyme and Reason today, we are welcoming Dr. Ganga Dhanesh, who is an associate professor in our Department of Communication. And I've been looking forward to this conversation, Ganga. You probably are the person that has the widest reach globally and the widest experience. And for us in the College of Arts and Humanities, the global awareness part is so important. So I hope that our conversation gets to that. Absolutely. But I usually like to start our conversation on Rhyme and Reason with what was the rhyme and reason of your journey? Like how did you get from being an undergraduate in India? And by the way, when I looked deeper into your profile, I was excited to see that we both have a BA in English.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Yes. So I definitely want to talk about why a BA in English is such a solid foundation. And then now, of course, you're a professor here at the University of Maryland. So love to hear about your journey through India to Singapore to UAE, to the United States. Take us on a quick journey.
Yeah, of course. I like to think of myself as having been on an organic journey. Mm-hmm. Honestly, none of this was really well planned in a way. So I was initially a science student who went into English language and literature.
Did you say a science student?
Mm-hmm.
What?
So I used to write in very staccato tones, and until my professors had to tell me, relax, you're now in English. Right. You need to express yourself differently. Mm-hmm. And so it was wonderful. I enjoyed my years in college. And a bit of bragging time, I graduated top of the university.
Of course, first class, I saw that. And for those of us who went to school in former British colonies, first class means that you were like top of the class, right?
Yeah. And then, but after that, I saw a lot of value in reading literature and poetry. But at the end of my education, I was like, I need to do something, right? Instead of just analyzing stuff. And that's when in India, a lot of MBA schools were cropping up and India was opening up. It was globalizing. So a couple of us, almost all of our classmates went to do a master's in English, but a couple of us went down the MBA route. Mm-hmm. This is an interesting story I'm going to share now. So at the MBA interview, all those wise professors asked me, so why aren't you becoming an academic? Like your family is full of academics. And this wise old 21-year-old me was so confident and said, I'm not cut out to be an academic, Now, I tell the story to all my students. I'm like, I think they knew what they were talking about. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in the corporate sector. So even within India, then I left to Mumbai, which was my first job with Indian national newspapers. And then I moved to Chennai to join MK Electric, which is now part of the Honeywell Group, which was all fantastic. And then I really enjoyed my time in the corporate sector doing mostly internal communication. But then life happened, and I got married, and my first kid came along, and it was like, well, someone needs to.
Life always gives you some diversions, right?
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can do a PhD because academia will give me flexibility. I tell all my students that success in the corporate sector and in academia is equally difficult and challenging. But academia gives you more flexibility of time. Like I could wake up at 4 a.m. and do my research and still be there for the kids, right? So thankfully, although it was a purely personal reason for me to move into academia, I fell in love with it. By the way, so then from India, we had gone to the U.S. actually for about 3 years when my husband got transferred. So with one tyke in tow. And then we reached Singapore. So I'm being a trailing spouse here. And when we reached Singapore is when I said, okay, let me do my PhD. So I joined the National University of Singapore. Had a fantastic time, really enjoyed myself.
Ganga Singapore was also the British system of education, right?
Yes.
So was there coursework in that?
But not as much as
we
here.
do here.
So, but I was quite a competitive person. So by then, when I heard that in the U.S. people take 10 courses, I'm like, no way. I need to do the same, right? So we only had to do 6. But me being me, ran around taking more courses. I mean, mostly methods from other departments, and it was fun. I enjoyed myself. And that's when my topic was corporate social responsibility. Again, story of my life is looking back and connecting dots, right? Until then, I didn't realize how my BA, my MBA, my corporate sector experience was connecting up.
Perfect.
But once I reached academia and I was looking at what's important, because for me, because I came from practice, doing research on something that had real life impact was very important.
Yes.
From day one. Right? So I realized that because I'm generally in public relations, communication management, the comms people are called in usually when there's a crisis.
Right.
Or at that time, CSR was starting to be a time when we were also in the room. So that's how I got into corporate social responsibility. And I thought I was going to settle in NUS and in Singapore, and everything was great when the spouse moved again, right? And he goes off to the UAE. So we all troop. Sometimes I'm amazed, like how my career unfolded over so many moves and managing both work and family. But maybe that's informed my work too. Maybe that's informed the way I think and I write, and I do my research. So UAE was fantastic. I joined Zayed University. It was a teaching university. And what was really interesting for me is, now I've been here for 3 years. Looking back at my teaching across the US, UAE, and Singapore, I find students are more similar than different.
That's so interesting because you've just cited 3 very different contexts. Singapore, UAE, that's the United Arab Emirates, and the United States. Tell me what you find to be the common thread between all these places, their students.
I think it's because of the age. They are all at an age when they are generally searching for identity.
That's true.
Right? I mean, they are in between high school and being released into the real world, as we call it. They're trying to figure out who they are, where they want to go, which path to take. I think that's the common thread across that age, the stage in life they are in.
Yes, it's a kind of coming of age period. I also think that because of technology now, that the world is so much smaller. So what young people in Singapore are experiencing on Instagram, for example, or TikTok,
Yes.
is very similar across the board.
Yeah.
So I think there's something there that connects their experiences.
Yeah, that too. But of course, I mean, all of their social context, their political, social, economic contexts are like widely different, right? So the things they talk about and the concerns they are could be different. Like, for example, my Singaporean students faced a very competitive environment, right? They had to compete for jobs even with local talent and foreign talent, which was pretty challenging. Whereas in the UAE, my students were all Emirati women. And for them, the situation was a bit different. A lot of them were first-generation students, but highly supported by their parents, especially their moms, to finish their education. They were looking forward to a career, but maybe, well, not everyone, but some of them. And then here, of course, I mean, you know how it is.
How does your approach to the students change when in these three different spaces? I imagine that you have to be very particular and careful with your students in UAE. My sister lived in Doha for a number of years, and the culture there is so different, and the way she would move around the world had to be different.
Yes.
She's a gynecologist, so she only the women would have stories when they would come to her, but she was valued because she's a woman who is a gynecologist. So tell me a little bit about how that played out for you as a professor.
Yeah, I think for me, this goes back to another story when I was starting out in NUS. I was always good at presentations. I was always good at my content, right? And when I was starting as a graduate teaching assistant, I thought I was being brilliant in class. But my student evaluations would never cross 4. It was 3.9.
Where was this? This was
Singapore.
And I so understand that.
I'm starting, right?
Yes.
And I'm so frustrated. I go to my advisor. She's also the chair of the department, Dr. Millie Rivera. And I said, what is happening? I'm like so good. And she goes, listen, it's not about just competence, okay? It's also about how you are connecting with the students.
Yes.
Start learning names. Connect with them. Best advice ever. So I started learning names, even when it's a big room of, say, 150 students, one of those gallery classes. I would learn about 10, 15 names. They don't know that.
Smart.
But I would say, Kate, what do you think? And Kate is startled, right? Prof knows my name in a class of 150. But of course, smaller classes, I would know everyone. Like 35, 50, I would learn. That made all the difference. I mean, not just learning names, but connecting with them, really engaging with them, making sure that I know where everyone is on their learning journey and making sure that no one is slipping through the cracks, right? So really bringing in a lot of care and compassion and connection, as I call it, to my teaching. That has helped me everywhere. So the competence bit, like the stuff I teach, I might adapt a bit depending on where I am, right? Because their exposure to the world is different. How much they know about the world of business works is different. So that I would change. But the underlying connection with the students, caring for them, has always stayed.
Yes.
And I have found that really helps, whether you are in the U.S. or you are in Dubai.
People are people, right?
Absolutely.
People are people. They appreciate the connection and the effort to make the connection.
Yes.
So I'd like to turn our attention to corporate social responsibility, which is sort of the core of what you study, what you write about.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate this. What you've said about how it connects back to English, it connects back to your time in the corporate world. We're recording this in 2026, and there's been so much talk about Target as a company or Tesla. What is the profile of these brands? I think that profile seems to be connected to how they communicate their responsibility to the buyers. So tell me a little bit about why you think this is such an important topic, and what lessons have you learned? Like, if you could talk to all the CEOs, what would you tell them?
Great question. Now, because I've been studying this for such a long time now, I can kind of trace the trajectory of how the idea of corporate social responsibility evolved and up until where we have reached now, right? So there was a time when people were debating, should companies even have social responsibilities, right? Who are managers to make decisions on behalf of the owners? Shouldn't private individuals be spending money on social issues?
Right.
So there was a time when those debates were happening. Over time to coming to what's called the strategic CSR, or the idea of doing well by doing good. So not seeing profit making and being good as kind of in opposition to each other, but both coexisting. Okay. To me, maybe because of my practice background, that approach to articulating your social responsibilities appeals the most. Having said that, we are going through really difficult times when, not just in the United States, but in multiple societies across the world, audiences are becoming more polarized. Issues are getting more polarized. So it is really difficult for companies to take a stance. So there was a time a few years ago, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement and Me Too, a lot of companies were jumping onto the bandwagon, taking stances. And, sometimes it was just performative, sometimes it was real. But in more recent times, because of the pressures and because of polarization, some companies have gone silent, right? And so...
Is this what you refer to in some of your work as stoicism?
Yes, I was coming to that. Good. So after all this, to me, during the pandemic, the philosophy of stoicism, which was like, 185 AD or something by Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, really appealed to me because I was also in leadership positions in the UAE at the time of the pandemic. So for me, this gave me a great anchor in my personal life as well as in my leadership role, in being able to tell myself and people around me, let's focus on what we can control, because there's a lot of stuff that's beyond our control. Let's focus on that and do everything we can within that, right? So when I was invited to give the keynote speech at the European Public Relations Research and Education Association a couple of years ago, that's what I spoke about. I'm like, let's apply stoicism to ways in which companies can articulate their social responsibilities. Because my question was, if by taking a stance on a controversial issue, if something really bad happens to the company because of stakeholder backlash and say you have to fold up, are you being responsible by taking a stance, right? So my argument there was companies should take a stoic approach, which means that, one, they have to be authentic, which means they have to figure out who they are, what they are, what are the values that they really and truly believe in, because this stuff cannot be an add-on. You can't just take on the latest fad and take a stance on it. Does it really matter to you? What are the values that you live by? What's your corporate identity, right? And then stay true to that, whatever anyone might say or do. But you have to know that first and then stick to it, right? That's one, identity. Two is about focusing on what's within your circle of control. You can, to whatever extent, at least figure out what your identity is. That's within your control. You can talk to your primary stakeholders, whether they are employees, investors, figure out whether they're on board with you, because they kind of inform your identity, right? Then if you decide to take a stance, you don't have to, but if you decide to because it aligns well with your values and your identity, then when you're faced with an obstacle, you can't just retreat, right? When you're faced with an obstacle, use what Stoicism calls recent choice. So look at whatever is happening. It doesn't say that you have to stick to your stand. If you need to adapt, adapt. But don't run away simply because of backlash, right? Because
Go
if
back
you have
to
done
your
your
identity.
if you have done your research, if it's rooted in your identity and values, you should be able to say, this is what we are doing. That's who we are, right? And then the most important thing I would say, what underpins all of this is this idea of reflection. So I am very happy to say that my solo authored book called
coming
CSR
out?
Communication,
Yes.
A Reflective Approach, is just coming out.
What's it called?
CSR Communication, A Reflective Approach.
Wonderful.
So I'm talking about the need for organizations to be reflective. So there is this idea of reflective practice, which is practiced in medicine, education, business leadership. So I'm applying that to CSR and saying that you need to be deeply reflective as an organization.
And I just want to remind our listeners that CSR stands for Corporate Social Responsibility.
Yes.
We're not all communication professors. Thanks, Ganga. Go ahead.
Yeah. So reflection is important. Reflection is important to before, like in terms of listening to what your stakeholders want, to reflect. It's called reflection for action. So before action, you're reflecting, you're listening, you're creating your strategies, and then reflection in action. So you're implementing, but it's like you are being very agile about the implementation. You are thinking through what's happening, and on the go you might adapt if needed. But it needs deep processes of reflection by the teams who are implementing, by the leaders who are leading these teams. You might need daily check-ins with your group and group huddles and things like that. And then finally is reflection on action, which is like reviewing what has happened, more like a postmortem, right?
Yes.
Okay, what went wrong or what went right? Whose voices were heard in that? Did new publics emerge while we were taking these stances? And how did we respond to that? Could we have done something differently? Whose voices were silenced or were absent from the discourse, right? So by embedding these processes of reflection in your organizational decision-making, you can stay true to who you are, is the argument I'm making, right? Because you're not just bumbling into something simply because there's been a call for companies to take a stand. You are doing something in a very deeply reflective, interrogative, kind of introspective,
Intentional.
mindful way.
I think this is the frustration a lot of people had after the killing of George Floyd. Was there were so many statements, so many things happening, which were good, but then it became so almost performative, as you said.
Yeah.
Almost whiplash, like follow what somebody else did, I'll do it too, This was also happening at universities, I'd love to hear you talk also about the corporate world versus the academic world in the sense of corporate social responsibility. And maybe ours is not corporate, but it's still a responsibility to our students and to our alums and to our parents and so on, the parents of our students. So I think what your book and what you're saying is encouraging us to all do is really be more intentional, take it a little slower, be deliberate,
Yes.
And reflect back on the identity of our company, our university. University of Maryland is different from the University of Oregon, or the University of London,
Absolutely.
So I really I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think we would have gotten more sustainable interventions.
Absolutely. I mean, you're right. Because after the murders of George Floyd, and at that time, there were a lot of companies that were just jumping on the bandwagon, and some of them really meant it. Like if you take, Ben & Jerry's is built on activism.
Absolutely.
Now, they have never flinched. right? Because they have
They
put
go back to their identity.
That's
exactly
who they
what
are.
You're saying. Yeah.
Right? And they state it. But some other companies, so some companies do state that. They do say that we are here for social purpose, or even if it's not purpose, we will do things in an ethical way and, whatever. So, but not everyone does that, and not everyone needs to do that, right? Even if you are doing your work ethically, legally, making money in a fair way, taking care of your employees, that's being socially responsible enough without taking on. My point is, not everyone has to take a stand on controversial issues if it is not part of who you are, right?
But there is an opportunity to also revise who you are, right?
Yes.
In the sort of face of evolving historical moments, correct?
Absolutely, yes, because identity is not cast in
Static,
stone,
right?
right?
Exactly.
It changes. That's why practicing reflection is really important, because you are then engaging with your employees, with your we know about activist investors, with all of your stakeholders in ways that you make sure that you're in sync with them, right?
Yeah.
Because, for example, when Nike supported Colin Kaepernick when he kneeled at the NFL game, they knew very well that there would be backlash, but they also knew that there was a portion of their consumer stakeholder base who would support them. Same thing, even when Ben and Jerry's took a stand on Black Lives Matter, there was a study on this, that they put just one post on Facebook, and it got flooded with positive and negative comments, right? Ben and Jerry's knew that was going to happen. They didn't respond to anything. It was just a statement, we support, right? That's it. Nike also knew what they were doing, and end of the day, in spite of the backlash, they did fine. And they've continued to do, again, that was not a one-off, right? So that was the Dream Crazy campaign, I think. And then they went on to Dream Crazier, which was more about women athletes. So it had Serena Williams, it had Mana Rustom from the Middle East. So at that time, there was all the debate about hijabi-clad athletes. They had that strategic CSR, right? So they had a hijabi product, but then they also took a stand on Dream Crazier and showing all of these amazing women athletes doing really wonderful things. And I remember they had a wonderful campaign in the Middle East called "What Will They Say About You?" Because that is a refrain that a lot of young girls from quite a few parts of the world, not just the Middle East, right? Even in India, would have heard growing up. What will they say about you, as though the world cares what you do? But that's how they're brought up. And therefore their choices are defined by this imagined world saying something about you. Nike addressed it, showing a hijabi athlete. She's skating. She's rollerblading, and this elderly gentleman and a woman are like looking at her very disapprovingly, but she just keeps skating, right? And they show a lot of vignettes like that, a little girl hesitating, but then it says finally, the world will say you are brave, you are powerful, you are strong, or something like that.
That's beautiful.
So they have been doing that, and they have been very successful in creating that sort of very kind of brave identity for themselves.
Is that a good example of stoic, of just kind of staying steady to your values? And
yeah, in Nike's case particularly, it wasn't always like this. So there was a time way back when there were allegations of sweatshops in Asia. So Nike is one of those companies that have changed, that have evolved, right? So around, I don't remember the dates exactly, but around that time, that's when they started producing CSR reports. They became far more transparent about what's happening in factories worldwide and things like that. From there to now, it's been like a really impressive evolution, and they don't seem to be showing any sign of letting up, which is great. So, like you said, it is in a way being stoic because they are connecting with their newly revamped identity, and they're sticking to it.
Right.
And despite backlash, they're not moving back and forth, which is not what happened with Bud Light, right? So when Bud Light had that commercial that featured Dylan Mulvaney, the transgender influencer, at the first sign of backlash, they dropped the influencer, and that had backlash from the transgender community, backlash from their consumers. And I mean, till then, they were about drink responsibly. They could have just stuck with that, right? I mean, that's good enough. You are in that business, so drink responsibly is your, contribution to societal responsibility. They jump on this like it was a fad to support the transgender community, and it was a complete mess. And their sales tanked. They were really deeply affected. And now they're trying to come back, which is a classic example of not really staying true to who you are, right? And just doing it for the sake of doing it because everyone else around you is doing it.
Could there have been an opportunity for them to, like Nike, kind of eventually get there, because I think we all agree that supporting and uplifting our transgender community is a good thing for a company to do. It's your argument here is that they didn't do it well, and then they didn't stick to it.
Yes.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
Also, I'm not sure whether they really understood their customer base.
Right. Oh, interesting.
Whether it
interesting.
resonated with them, right? Now, that's important as well. So that's why as long as they are, producing beer in ethical ways, they're not harming anyone, they're following the laws of the land, and they're making, enough profits to pay their employees and suppliers and investors. If their identity is not about standing up for, you know what I mean?
I do.
So it doesn't sound all that nice, but at least in that case, they are being true to themselves, right?
I see.
There's a mismatch between what most of their customers want versus maybe, what is seen as right in society, because what is seen as right today, it changes,
Correct,
right? What is
correct.
ethical and what's legal is kind of
That's right.
a moving thing. So they need to figure out what really matters. That's why I really resonate with the original definition of CSR, which was by a professor called Archie Carroll. He actually said that the base is economic responsibility. Because you have to stay economically viable. That's the base of your societal responsibility. And even when I've interviewed some of these founders of large companies or heads of CSR, they keep talking about, especially if they have a huge employee base, like 100,000 people, they would say just staying afloat is a huge responsibility
to their employees.
To their employees, right? So it's like concentric circles of responsibility.
I get it.
So you stay profitable while you are doing all the right things, while you are staying within the laws of the land. And then he calls philanthropic responsibility or discretionary responsibility as the icing on the cake. Basically what he's saying is don't go out and adopt a village to support it if you haven't fixed your house. If you're not doing things ethically, if you're not taking care of employees, don't go and engage with the problems of the world. First put your house in order, then if you want to, right?
Yeah.
Now, we have evolved a lot from those definitions. It's become more of taking a stance. But because of all this backlash that's happening, you take a stance, and if you're really hurt, then are you actually being responsible doing that,
Gotcha.
right? So a way to navigate that is to think through what is really important to you. And when I say you, your employees and customers and
stakeholders,
they are all important.
Stockholder. Yes.
So if everyone agrees this is who we are, do it. But if everyone says, well, maybe not, let's just drink beer, right? And everyone gets to drink beer, and we are doing that ethically, Well, because in that process also, you can be buying fair trade ingredients, right? You can be making sure that your supply chain is being run properly, which is fine too. So that's a kind of slight distinction.
Very
I'm
good.
making,
Very
yeah.
good. It's so interesting to me that you're sitting here talking as if you're in the business school, but you're in arts and humanities. And it makes sense to me because it's important as a professor in our communication department to help our students understand how they can take an understanding of culture, an understanding of history, an understanding of people, and help companies really mold themselves, their brands, their sense of responsibility, the meaning of responsibility, which is deeply embedded in semiotics and meaning and the things that we do in English, and help them get better. So I'm really so grateful that you're in the college and that you're helping our students really bridge the corporate world and the humanities. I think it's critical. You've talked a lot, and we are kind of rounding down now to the end of our chat here. Wish I could talk to you for hours. There's so much that we could talk about. I want to come now to our identity as a college. And this season of Rhyme and Reason, I've been asking our guests to reflect on our sense of who we are, and that's a lot of what you do. So, Ganga, as you will remember, because you're on collegiate council for the college and so on, you'll recall that our strategic plan commitments are fourfold. So I'm going to read them out to you, but I know that you already know them, and I'm going to have you pick one that really resonates with you as a scholar, as a professor, as a teacher, as an instructor, all the things. So our strategic plan commitments are transformative thinking, boundless creativity, expansive empathy, and meaningful futures. So of those four, pick one that you'd like to kind of talk about real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be everything is super appealing.
I know. This is a tough
and I
question.
think they're all interconnected as well. But if I were to pick one, it would be expansive empathy. Because I think we need a lot of that in the world that we are in today. And given my journey so far across so many countries and contexts and different stages of my life, and having taught students, I really don't think many people have taught students in 3 completely different contexts.
I can't think of any of our colleagues.
I think expansive empathy is what is absolutely required, because I see more similarities than differences amongst human beings across the world. But human beings are always looking for differences, right? To stratify, to separate, to put people in different boxes instead of looking at what connects us all. And honestly, I think our students are best positioned to do that. They're such an amazing generation of young people. So I did a CSR class last semester, and it was filled with students from communication, business, journalism, even had a student from computer science. And it was so fascinating to see how committed they were to keeping companies responsible. They seem to understand CSR in a very, very fundamental way. Like it came naturally to them. Like, when we are discussing case studies, it would be like, what were they thinking? Like, they can't be doing that. So I think this generation is really well poised to continue whatever work we have been doing. And I think particularly to convey the message of, not just conveying message, engaging with the world empathetically, right? Making that kind of a foundation of who they are and how they live, how we all live together. So I think, that would be the most important.
I like that. I also that it doesn't surprise me that you chose that one because we were intentional when we chose those two words, expansive and empathy, because you could live in College Park, which is where we are as a university, that's our home, and be empathetic to College Park or maybe to the Prince George's County. But we thought expansive would allow us to really stretch ourselves, to Singapore, to UAE and to all the parts of the world where actually a lot of our students come from. This is a very diverse campus as well, but also to the places where we hope our students go when they graduate. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on Rhyme and Reason, Ganga.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's always wonderful to talk to you.
You too. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this discussion of some of the important questions that focus on what it means to be human. Please join us again on Rhyme and Reason. In RHU, we're proud to be a community of scholars and intellectuals whose work is both timely and timeless. We do this in our classes, in our research, and in our community engagement. Be sure to visit rhu.umd.edu to learn more about the College of Arts and Humanities at the University of Maryland and our efforts to see a more equitable and just future for all of us. Thanks for listening.